UFC 317 is finally over, and what an epic encounter it was between two former champions, Charles Oliveira and Ilia Topuria, for the lightweight belt. After witnessing such an intense clash, the UFC pros have shared their valuable reaction on this fight. Islam Makhachev shared his thoughts on the UFC 317 showdown between Ilia Topuria and Charles Oliveira, noting that the fight could have gone either way depending on who stuck to their game plan. He said that if Oliveira had secured the takedown, he could have finished the fight quickly on the ground, but if Topuria had landed clean, Charles could have gone to sleep. For Islam, it all came down to execution. Whoever imposed their style would have walked away with the win.
Ilia Topuria has said a lot about you. He's being very respectful now this week. Like he said, he doesn't think you ducked him and he respects you for chasing your goals at welterweight. Who do you think is going to win on Saturday at UFC 317 between Ilia and Charles Oliveira?
It depends, man. Who can follow his game plan, you know? If Charles can take him down, he can finish him easy in the ground. Or if Topuria catch him, he gonna sleep, you know. And two options. Who is gonna make the game plan?
Islam Makhachev also reacted to the idea of Charles Oliveira becoming the first two-time lightweight champion, acknowledging that it would be a major accomplishment. He said Charles definitely has a strong chance, especially since he tends to perform well against strikers.
There's never been a two-time lightweight champion. Charles will be the first if he wins. That would be a big accomplishment.
Well, I don't know about it, but he have chance. He have big chance, you know.
Yeah.
And he always fight good against the striking, you know, striking. But if Charles have small chance, if you give him small chance, he gonna finish.
Dustin Poirier shared his thoughts on Ilia Topuria's knockout power, calling it potentially the greatest three-fight win streak if he had finished Charles Oliveira after stopping Volkanovski and Holloway. Poirier praised all three as legends and said that if Ilia had pulled it off, he truly would have been everything he appeared to be, a dangerous fighter.
Where would you think if he goes from knocking out Volk to knocking out Max, and if he knocks out Charles, is this one of like the greatest three-fight winning streaks we've ever seen?
For sure. I mean, these are legends we're talking about, you know, stopping a guy who's never been stopped in Max, beating Volk, who has long time top of the game, like Charles, another former champ who's putting on great performances. Like, man, what can I say about this guy? I'll say it again. If he does it, he's everything he said he is, man. He's a dangerous dude.
Dustin Poirier expressed concern that Topuria might have been undersized. He noted that Oliveira's size and dangerous submissions could have posed a problem, especially if he had inflicted early damage. However, Poirier also pointed out Oliveira's tendency to take shots, which could have been risky against Topuria's knockout power. He said he had been eager to see how the fight would play out.
I think Ilia, man. I think he's going to be way undersized against Charles. I just don't, unless Charles can sub him, maybe if he hurts him, but it's going to be tough, I think. Because Charles gets hit a lot, you know, and Ilia puts people away. I'm excited about it.
Merab Dvalishvili also spoke highly of his friend Ilia Topuria, calling him different from anyone he had ever trained with. He praised Ilia's intelligence, strength, and relentless work ethic, saying he believed Ilia could beat both Islam Makhachev and Charles Oliveira. Merab emphasized that training with Ilia had felt completely different compared to anyone else he had worked with. No other training partner had given him the same feeling of intensity and skill.
I think Ilia is a little bit shorter, but I think he hits hard and his style, you know. It's like we all see that Alex Volkanovski, he's not the tallest, but how he fights, and he beat 3 times Max Holloway, tall guy, you know. Size depends how you fight, you know, like, and then I don't think size is a big difference. It depends how you fight, and Ilia's fight style is typical for Islam and even for Charles Oliveira.
Former UFC champion Demetrius Johnson also picked Ilia Topuria to defeat Charles Oliveira, predicting a finish in the fight. He said he had expected Topuria to hurt Oliveira and follow him to the ground for a potential stoppage, similar to what Islam Makhachev had done. Johnson made it clear he was backing Topuria and added that he would have been shocked if the fight hadn't ended with someone getting knocked out.
Someone gives you 10 G's, Demetrius, who you got?
I'm going to go with Ilia Topuria.
The reason why is because when you look at Charles Oliveira's last couple of fights, you know, when he fought Justin Gaethje, Dustin Poirier, you know, Michael Chandler even, he's been hurt in every single one of those fights.
Yeah.
He gets dropped and he goes to his back. And then a lot of those guys, even Islam hurt him on the feet. And a lot of those guys don't follow him to the ground. They allowed him to get back up and he gets back in a gunfight and then he's able to put those guys out. Now, I am betting on that Ilia Topuria is going to hurt him, and when he does hurt him, he's going to fall to the ground and try to finish him like Islam did. Now, Charles Oliveira can win that fight because we have seen Ilia Topuria been hurt before from a taller guy by Jay Herbert. Jay Herbert was able to rock him multiple times, but Ilia Topuria was able to make the adjustments, and he ended up knocking out Jay Herbert. So at the end of the day, I'm gonna go with Ilia Topuria, and I know someone's getting knocked the fuck out. Somebody's getting finished. Like, yeah, if nobody gets finished, I will be shocked.
Meanwhile, Tom Aspinall was backing Ilia Topuria in this fight.
Topuria versus Charles Oliveira.
Topuria.
Tom Aspinall lauded Ilia Topuria, calling him the future of MMA. He highlighted Topuria's devastating power, strong grappling, and his seamless ability to combine every aspect of the fight game. Aspinall also noted that Topuria's Georgian and Spanish roots added a unique and refreshing presence to the sport. In Aspinall's view, Ilia wasn't just a rising star, he was the next big thing in MMA.
But, wow, he's got devastating power, great grappler as well, links everything together so well, great for the sport, obviously Georgian/Spanish guy, so he's mixing up nationalities, and just the future, for me, he's the future of MMA.
Definitely.
He's the next step, if you like.
Evolving of the sport.
Tom Aspinall praised Charles Oliveira for his fearless fighting style, noting that he was never afraid to trade punches with dangerous opponents. He pointed out Oliveira's willingness to stand and exchange with heavy hitters like Michael Chandler and Justin Gaethje, and saw similarities in Ilia Topuria's approach. Aspinall also emphasized how Oliveira often used wild exchanges to his advantage.
I think something that I like about Charles, let's have a little look at him, is he isn't afraid to exchange with the punches, with anybody. We've seen him get punched off guys like Chandler. We've seen him get guys off guys like Gaethje and all the rest of the short, stocky, powerful punches. So Topuria, his style isn't dissimilar to other guys he's fought before. But what he likes to get involved, get him dragged into a bit of a punching match, and then he'll tie him up. And then he'll go for flying triangles. He's not scared to be on his back either. He doesn't mind getting taken down where he's on his back, and he'll be throwing up. He'll be doing all this kind of stuff. He'll be throwing up triangles. He'll be going sweeps, lifting him up. He'll be doing all different kind of attacks off his back as well, and that is something that is difficult to prepare for.
Meanwhile, Paddy Pimblett saw Ilia Topuria as a strong contender to beat Charles Oliveira at UFC 317. He called Oliveira a bit chinny and noted that he had been prone to taking damage over his long career. While acknowledging Oliveira's threat on the ground, Pimblett described him as reckless. He also highlighted the often overlooked size jump from 145 to 155.
Ilia beats Charles then?
I think he might, to be honest. Charles is a bit chinny, isn't he? I don't know, he's had about 40 fights or something. He always gets punched. He always gets cracked.
Yeah.
So,
he's reckless, but he's super exciting.
Yeah, he is.
And he's dangerous.
Exciting. If he gets him down, I can see him winning, because that 10 pounds difference is a big difference.
Yeah.
145 to 155, it's a big difference. People don't understand that because they don't watch the sport or they're not involved in the sport. But that 10 pounds makes a big difference. And especially, like, Charles is like my height. Ilia's like down here when I stand up, know what I mean? So it's gonna make a big difference.
Paddy Pimblett hinted that Ilia Topuria may not have fully anticipated the size and physicality Charles Oliveira would bring into the cage. He explained that fighters moving up a weight class often don't grasp the difference until they're face-to-face with their opponent. Drawing from his own experiences, Pimblett mentioned Bobby Green and Michael Chandler, both of whom looked smaller on screen but felt much bigger in person.
Ilia might get a bit of a fright at how big Charles is when he stands opposite him. Fighters do that with me, who fight at lightweight. You know what I mean? I'll never forget Bobby Green looking over at me and being like, what, he's big him. Same with Chandler. Like people thought Chandler was going to be bigger than me, and he just weren't.
On the other hand, Beneil Dariush picked Ilia Topuria to come out on top against Charles Oliveira at UFC 317. He highlighted Topuria's powerful striking and superior wrestling as key advantages. Dariush suggested that the fight could ultimately have been decided in the grappling exchanges, and in his opinion, that was where Topuria held the edge.
I lean towards Ilia, but it ain't by much, man. It's just a little bit. I think Charles has a really good chance with his power, with his fakes, with, you know, if he uses his full arsenal, he's a very difficult guy to deal with.
So why do you lean Ilia? What's the kind of thing that's tipping you over the edge there?
I would say Ilia's got great power, and I think wrestling-wise, I would probably say Ilia is probably the better wrestler. So I think that's where this fight could be decided, who the better grappler is.
Islam Makhachev's coach, Javier Mendez, said he would have bet on Ilia Topuria to defeat Charles Oliveira, even though he personally had hoped Oliveira would win. He explained that Oliveira's upright stance could have made him vulnerable to Topuria's low, pressure-heavy boxing style. Mendez highlighted Topuria's precision, especially his ability to land clean shots to the chin, as he did against Josh Emmett. In his view, Topuria would likely have created more openings and opportunities in the matchup.
Ilia, power puncher, boxer, low stance, versus Charles Oliveira. If someone gave you 100 grand to bet on that fight, who would you bet?
Ilia. But if you're asking me who I would want to win, I'll put Charles. I'll put my money on Charles.
Yeah.
It's basically because Charles is going to stand in there upright, like you're saying, and Ilia's got a really good way of connecting with that chin. Really, really nice. Just like what he did with Volk. Ilia's got more opportunities than Charles does.
Javier Mendez believed Ilia Topuria would beat Charles Oliveira due to his sharp inside boxing and ability to land clean power shots. He noted that Oliveira's upright stance made him an easy target and suggested that Oliveira might have struggled to secure takedowns without relying on knees or front kicks. Despite acknowledging Oliveira's reach and kicking game, Mendez saw more paths to victory for Topuria.
What is it about his skill set that you like more?
It's basically because Charles is going to stand in there upright, like you're saying, and when he gets inside, he's going to use that boxing, and Charles' head's going to be up, and Ilia's got a really good way of connecting with that chin on the inside. Really, really nice. Just like what he did with Volk, you know, and I think if Charles doesn't get him up the middle with knees or front kicks up the middle, he's going to have a hard time with his boxing against him, and he's going to have a hell of a time trying to take him down. So it's going to be one of those where Ilia's got more opportunities than Charles does. But Charles can surprise us with his length, you know, and up the middle would be really, really well suited for him. And the kicks too, you know, body, head type thing, you know, low, high, you know, he could do really well with that.
Heck yeah. So, okay, someone gives you 100 grand to bet. John Jones versus Tom Aspinall.
If John Jones took it, that means John Jones felt very confident he would win. So
Jorge Masvidal praised Ilia Topuria as a rare talent and future champion, recalling past training sessions where his potential was obvious. Despite recognizing Charles Oliveira's size, striking, and jiu-jitsu, Masvidal believed Topuria was on another level and fully backed him to win the UFC 317 title fight.
Topuria a long time. Maybe I know Topuria 5-6 years, and I've always said Topuria will be a world champion. So at the time, I'm like number 3 in the world at 170, number 2 in the world at 170, you know, and me and Ilia are working out. He was always very respectful, never throwing his hardest, but I could just feel, you know, I blocked the shot, and boom, boom, and I go, and I told him after, the first time we trained, I go, brother, God willing, you will be champion, brother, because Ilia's 1 out of 10,000. I've trained with everybody. Hey, say their name. Yeah. I've trained with everybody, brother. This guy's special. And I think he's going to be a world champion at 155. He's going to beat Charles, man. He's going to find a way to beat him. Charles is bigger. Charles has kicks, knees, elbows, great jiu-jitsu, good wrestling. Skill everywhere, Charles is good. But Ilia is just different, brother. This guy's special.
Renato Moicano also believed the Charles Oliveira versus Ilia Topuria matchup was tougher than it seemed. While many expected Topuria to dominate, he warned against underestimating Oliveira's toughness and experience. Moicano acknowledged Topuria's strength at featherweight, calling it a real test for both fighters. Though he initially leaned toward Topuria, after recently podcasting with Oliveira, Moicano chose to back Charles.
You're fighting on the Charles Oliveira versus Ilia Topuria card. Charles is a big underdog. How do you see that fight going?
Yeah, that's a tougher matchup that a lot of people think. They think Topuria gonna run through Charles. You never count Charles Oliveira out. I think he's very tough. But Topuria is good, you know? He's 145. It's going to be a tough fight for both fighters. I don't have an opinion on that. I was leaning more to Topuria, but today I just had a podcast with Charles on my Brazilian channel. It's just very hard to not like the guy. That makes harder, you know, to pick against him. So I'm going with Charles just because he's Brazilian.
On the contrary, Curtis Blades favored Charles Oliveira over Ilia Topuria at UFC 317. He believed Oliveira's sharp striking, elite grappling, and deep submission game would present challenges Topuria hadn't faced before. Since Oliveira wouldn't be concerned about takedowns, Blades expected him to be more aggressive on the feet and possibly secure a finish by the third round.
I want to go Oliveira just because I believe he has the hands and the grappling. He presents more issues than I think any of Ilia's past opponents. He's had a great run, but he hasn't faced a grappler who's as dangerous as Oliveira. And I just think Oliveira being able to pressure and to pretty much not have to worry about takedowns will open up his hands more. And I think he'll be able to stop him on the feet.
Moreover, Michael Chandler was excited for the Ilia Topuria versus Charles Oliveira fight, saying he planned to watch it live cage-side. He praised Oliveira as a tough, well-rounded veteran who's always dangerous, while also highlighting Topuria's explosive power and precision. Chandler called the matchup thrilling and unpredictable, expecting a high-action fight filled with fireworks due to the dangerous skill sets both fighters brought to the cage.
So I'll be cage-side for that fight to watch it. And we'll see how it plays out.
Yeah, who do you think is going to win?
Man, it's tough. You don't bet against freaking Charles Oliveira because he's so dang good everywhere, and he's a really hard guy to beat. With that being said, Ilia Topuria's got some crazy power in his hands and crazy accurate strikes. So it'll be very interesting to see how that fight goes.
Rafael Fiziev also shared his thoughts on Ilia Topuria and expressed doubts about how well Topuria would adapt to the lightweight division. While he praised Topuria's sharp boxing and knockout power at featherweight, Fiziev questioned whether those tools would be as effective at 155 pounds. He pointed out that Topuria was physically smaller than many lightweights, including Charles Oliveira, and emphasized that lightweight is one of the UFC's deepest and most competitive divisions. Fiziev believed the key challenge for Topuria would be dealing with the size, strength, and overall talent in the new weight class.
Ilia Topuria, he's a little smaller against, I think he's a little smaller against Charles, but he also has crazy hands, beautiful boxing, strong hands. Featherweight is featherweight. They're dangerous, but honestly, lightweight is the craziest, hardest division in the UFC. This is challenge for him. Now we see how he adapt for that, you know, because featherweight is not lightweight. Lightweight is big difference.
Furthermore, Ode Osborne said Ilia Topuria versus Charles Oliveira was a fascinating stylistic matchup. He gave Oliveira the advantage on the ground, but favored Topuria in the striking department, while cautioning against underestimating Oliveira's stand-up. Pointing to his knockdowns of Gaethje and Chandler, Osborne believed Topuria had the stronger chin.
So Ilia Topuria versus Charles Oliveira, that one is definitely an interesting matchup because obviously Charles, in my opinion, has the advantage on the ground. But, you know, stand-up wise, I'm gonna have to go with Ilia only because he's been such a GOAT on the stand-up era. Charles has, you know, you can't count him out as well. You know, you've seen him drop Justin Gaethje, Michael Chandler, some of the greatest fighters ever with his stand-up. So his stand-up isn't counted out. I'm just saying, I think, you know, maybe Charles has less of a chin, whereas Ilia can afford to take one or two, but can Charles take one of Ilia's? That is going to be the deciding factor of the fight. If he can, then it's going to be, you know, an interesting back and forth to see how that plays out. But, you know, I'm going to go ahead and swing Ilia's way on this one.
So that's all we have from today's video, and hopefully you have enjoyed it. Pros have shared their reaction on this epic fight, and we would love to hear your thoughts as well on the outcome of this matchup in the comments section. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and make sure to press the bell icon to get the latest updates about the UFC.